Hour on the line with us, our old buddy Dean Obeidallah, host of the Dean Obeidallah Show, weekdays 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Sirius XM Progress Channel 127. He's a columnist with CNN.com, contributor to the New Republic. His Substack is The Dean's Report, deanofradio.com, or deanobeidallah.substack.com, or just go over to substack.com and plug in Dean's Report, and it'll pop right up. Dean Obeidallah is the Twitter handle, or Sirius XM Progress. I wanted to ask you about Muslims in Michigan. You being a member of the Muslim community, I realize
these are my people.
Yeah, you don't live in Michigan, but I grew up there. I'm real familiar with the Dearborn Arab American community. Louise and I, there's some great restaurants down there that we used to go to every weekend, and they'd have these festivals and things. But how and I'm guessing that we're of the same mind that Biden really should be calling out Netanyahu about the war crimes he's committing in Gaza and has committed, and pushing harder for a two-state solution. In fact, I'd love to get your thoughts on that too. But to what extent do you think this is? I get making a statement today by voting for uncommitted, and that doesn't hurt Biden. It just sends a message to him. But how does, what will the impact of this be in the general election? Let's assume that nothing has changed between now and November, although I think that's a very unsafe assumption. But I
think the war will be over in 8 months. I have to hope for that. Look, to my fellow Democrats who are upset with Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, and their allies, there are a lot of African Americans and younger people of all backgrounds in Michigan saying we're going to vote uncommitted and send a message to Joe Biden. This will not mean Biden will lose the primary. It doesn't mean he's going to lose in November. They're sending a message 8 months out from the election. That's when you do it. You don't do this 2 weeks before the election. That would be terrible for us. 8 months out. And President Biden's going to hear from Democrats. And I will say Biden's tone has changed in the Middle East, and that's because of the grassroots speaking out.
Yep.
In the beginning, and I just wrote an article for my newsletter that came out this morning on this, in the beginning he was saying, I don't believe Palestinian claims on civilian laws. He didn't say Hamas, he said Palestinians. And he said proudly, I'm a Zionist. And there was no compassion for the Palestinians. And he's an empathetic guy. Over time, that changed over the last few months. He even talked about indiscriminate bombing. Yep. Was his term, describing what Netanyahu was doing. That's the grassroots movement there. So he is moving in the right direction. He is working for a ceasefire. It is clear to me that Netanyahu is undermining Joe Biden because Netanyahu wants Donald Trump in. So I think there's another level to it that Biden's aware of, which is why we had reporting 2 weeks ago, him calling Netanyahu hell to work with, and he's not on his team, and even calling him a curse word, according to NBC reporting, which I know was leaked. They were leaking that on purpose. So you're getting a sense Netanyahu is part of the GOP apparatus. He's long been. He was disrespectful to President Obama because he was black, and that's the racism Netanyahu on display. Yep. So President Biden's in a difficult position, but I think we're going to see a ceasefire reached, I hope, within a week. And from there, it's up to President Biden to ensure there are conditions on military aid, or at least calling for conditions on military aid to Netanyahu that they can't be used to violate human rights laws anymore. We even have a law already about this, but to actually enforce it and talk about it more, help aid for the Palestinians. And, right now, Tom, you may have covered this or not, the UN Relief Works Agency, there's an allegation by Netanyahu that 12 members of that organization of thousands of employees, which are Palestinians in the West Bank, Gaza, and even in Lebanon, had 12 people tied to Hamas. Well, they fired them, and they're purging them. And that's a good thing. And we paused aid. But I would ask you this. In the Netanyahu cabinet is a man named Itamar Ben-Gvir. Ben-Gvir was convicted in an Israeli court in 2007 of terrorism against Arab Christians and Muslims. He is part of the administration. So why are we giving a penny to an administration where there's literally a convicted terrorist as a minister? We should hold up no aid. Netanyahu didn't have to bring him in. He did. So he brought a terrorist into his administration now. The man's there for over a year. He's horrific. And President Biden mentioned Ben-Gvir by name on Seth Meyers' show last night about how extreme he is. Right. He's a dangerous man. No money to Netanyahu until Ben-Gvir is gone.
Do you see any connections between Netanyahu and Putin? I mean, both Netanyahu and Putin want Trump as president, but beyond that, are they hooking up in other ways?
That I'm not sure about, and I haven't seen any of that. Clearly, there's this axis of evil would be a Trump, Putin, Netanyahu axis going on there. And Benjamin Netanyahu has never been a friend of the Democrats. He's part of the GOP apparatus, and we should view him as that. and at least be conditioned going forward. I mean, Senator Chris Van Hollen gave a great speech on the floor 2 weeks ago saying, use the term textbook war crimes have been committed by Netanyahu in Gaza. And that's what collective punishment is. And if people want to defend collective punishment of 2 million people for the crimes of Hamas, that's your choice. But you are defending war crimes. Again, that's your choice to defend it. But let's not pretend it's not a war crime. It is a war crime. And as Senator Van Hollen has said, in the first 2 months of this conflict, 10 times more children were killed in Gaza than the 2 years of the war in Russia, in Ukraine that Russia has been waging. And that's an eye-opener for people, I hope. The indiscriminate bombing, dropping 2,000-pound bombs in Gaza, 500 of them at least, according to CNN, those bombs kill people 1,000 feet away. So even in good faith, you're bombing Hamas at one target. You're killing people in an apartment building a quarter of a mile away from them. And they did that, and they didn't care, because the human life of Palestinian Christians and Muslims did not matter to Benjamin Netanyahu. That's what we're dealing with, a right-wing supremacist or movement, no different than white supremacists in the United States of America. So that's their kindred spirit. Yeah,
and tragically. Dean Obeidallah, the great Dean Obeidallah, host of the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, 127 every evening or every weekday, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Check out his Substack newsletter, deanobeidallah.substack.com. It's called the Dean's Report. Just go to substack.com and plug in Dean's Report, and it'll pop right up for you. Dean, and it's free.
Please do.
There you go. Thank you, Dean.
Thanks, Tom.
Good talking.
Nice chatting with you, my friend.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.